Right. So I got a show I'm gonna be playing later on, so I should be practicing, but I'm not. So I will be practicing soon. I'm not the not practicing type. I'm just saying that I'm kind of procrastinating right now. There's a couple things I wanted to watch. First of all, Stevie T just came out. New Stevie T video says concert fees are getting ridiculous. Let's check this out. And really, one of these days, if I can get somebody on who's an expert in the music business, I really want to talk about Taylor Swift and re-recording that album. I think there's a very skewed perception of how music business works. And I'm not 1,000% sure in her case, but chances are she might not really be the good guy in that one. But I don't know. We shall see. So here's Stevie T. Speaking of Taylor Swift, concert fees are getting ridiculous. I don't know that this is specifically about her or whatever, but it is upsetting that she's one of the few people on earth that has the power to actually do something about Ticketmaster. But instead, she put up insane prices for her fans. You know, I know I'm going to get murdered by Swifties if there's any perception of Taylor Swift bashing, but I don't think that's disputable, that one right there. So let's see what Stevie T has to say.
Hello, I'm Jeff. I'll be your Ticketmaster for tonight. I'm here
Shots fired.
to see my boyfriend's band. Excellent. And tickets are $20. And your total comes to $347.92. Why? We believe in transparency and fairness for all our patrons. What is that? Oh, there's just a couple small transaction fees. Entry fee? What is that for? Oh, that's the admission cost to enter the building. Isn't that what the ticket's for? We believe in transparency and fair transaction fee.
Yeah, so if you guys, the few times this has actually come up in Congress or whatever, if you don't know, there's a big fat monopoly that runs most of the bigger shows, and they're complete scumbags. I don't know. Am I allowed to say that? It's my opinion. My opinion is they're complete scumbags, and it's like YouTube and Google and Amazon, some of these other companies that by all rights are monopolies that should never have been allowed to exist. If we're going to stick with that monopoly crap. Remember when Microsoft was sued for being allegedly a monopoly? And yet nobody sued the actual monopoly, which was Apple at the time. So if Microsoft is a monopoly, Ticketmaster is, I think Ticketmaster, Live Nation, all that stuff is one company now. Is that right? Ticketmaster, merge, Live Nation. Yes. Here's a Hollywood Reporter. Live Nation Ticketmaster merger is official. Ooh, that's 2009. See, that's how far behind him. Anyways, here we go.
Oh, that's just a small transaction fee for transacting the transaction fee. I gotta take a fee? Oh, that's to use our restroom facilities. Why do I get charged for that? We believe in transparency and fairness for all our patrons. So, transparency fee. I do not agree with this. A fee to disagree. Wait, how long is this sign? Whoops, another fee. This is just a money grab. I'm not paying this. Do you want to fee your boyfriend's band or not? Okay, just put it on my credit. Transaction fee. Serious fee. Delicious taffy. Okay, how is this feasible? What a catastrophe! You better.
You know, he is a comedian, but I don't know that you could say this is untrue.
Fee. This is. Are you done? 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 We believe in transparency and fairness for all our patrons. I'm just gonna stop talking. Silence fee. Okay, stop. Can we just put this on my credit card, please? Abso-fee-can-lutely. How much? Okay, and with the price transparency fee, your total will be $476.34. I'm sorry, your card was declined, fee. That's because I can't afford it. Well, let's address your cancellation and departure fee, and we'll get you well on your... Oh no. How do I open this? I can run you through the process. No. No.
Yeah, so, you know, all you Taylor Swifties, whatever the cultists, that is what you're supporting. And, you know, again, she was one of the very few people who had the power to do something about that. And I think actually just made it worse. So, okay. So what I was originally going to have is, we have all these videos you always see, especially for when people are trying to buy new gear or they're just getting into recording or whatever, and they want to buy whatever gear they need to get started. And you'll always see these claims. Can you hear a difference? Is this really better? Like, at least they're asking the question, can you hear the difference between this product and that product? Like, why should I pay $5,000 for a mic preamp when the $50 whatever one comes with my interface for free? And what kills me about this is, in most cases, this is trivially easy to test. If you listened to the show yesterday, you know we talked a lot about this, but it's so easy to test. So why ask, can you hear the difference? First, get an oscilloscope or just measuring software, whatever, run a sweep through it, take a look at the frequency response, take a look at the distortion, take a look at the noise, take a look at the bandwidth, and see if there's anything actually different. We who have actually tested this stuff, famously on my website, which is down right now, sadly, we tested this stuff, and turns out most of the stuff is so insanely close to each other, you would never hear a difference in. But I'll show you. There's software that I think there's a paid version, but you can use the free version of this Room Acoustics, Room EQ Wizard, and it'll do all your measurements that you need to actually tell the difference between two products, if there is a difference. So why do they always ask, can you hear a difference? Why don't they just do the actual work and show that there's a difference, and then see after that whether or not the difference reaches the threshold of audibility? So that's another thing you got to think about. Even if you can show a difference in a graph or whatever, that doesn't mean that it's enough to actually hear the difference with. So I know there's one here, cheap versus expensive violins. Can you hear the difference? This is the low-hanging fruit, right? We all know that violin aficionados, sorry, to put this way, are nuts. They're as absolutely nuts as wine sommeliers or whatever you call them, that charge all this money for their extremely good taste buds that supposedly can, tell you a bad wine, good wine, whatever. And turns out when you actually test them, they can't even tell the difference between red and white wine. Violin guys are absolutely nuts. When even that Stradivarius thing everybody talks about, when the properly blinded test happens, none of the experts can tell the difference between, like, I think it was a $60 violin or a $200 violin and $1 million violin. So they're the easy guys to pick on: dowsers, violinists, wine tasters. But you'll still see the same fallacious things. Like, if it costs a lot of money, they have to justify how much it costs, and the stuff they'll go through is nuts. There's a one from Hardcore Music Studio where he grabs 4 versions of the 1176 compressor and says, can you hear a difference? And you actually can hear a difference in some of the cases. I don't know if it's settings, but again, start with the baseline. Like, how about let's put them at the same setting and with the absolutely static signal we can actually measure with and check. It's actually a pretty good video, I think. It's called Same Compressor, 4 Budgets. Can you hear a difference? By Hardcore Music Studio. But what you don't see in the whole video is an actual graph where he, checked and seen if they even pass signal correctly. In this case, sorry, I'm a little bit stuffy, but in this case, there was a listening test that did matter. I think that if you would have spent more time getting everything exactly matched, you might have the differences go away. He did show the warm audio one seemed to be distorting more than the other ones, but the El Cheapo one, the real one, in quotes, waves plug in, all that, you could make them sound the same. Definitely not worth the difference in budget, I wouldn't think. But at least this one, there was some slight reason to do a listening test rather than just showing graphs. But I would have started with the graphs. And here's one, this guy Philip Conrad, 30-minute video. Can you hear the difference? Blind bass direct box shootout. Now, this is one of those things we really tested. And again, this is one where the absolute cheapest direct box did just as well as the most expensive. Well, no. Did just as well as the best direct boxes out there in terms of noise, distortion, bandwidth, and frequency response, which again are the things that actually matter. And there was actually it was a Universal Audio thing that didn't do so well, but maybe it was a bad unit. It was very expensive. It was the most expensive DI in the. It was the most expensive DI that we tested, but man, it was absolutely terrible. Hold on, I'm just trying to. I have to up my my TikTok count. Sorry, if you guys are on TikTok, please subscribe. I'm trying to get a stream key. I'd love to be on there more. Seems like that's much more of what's going on. Let me just pop up the live thing. I'm really trying to learn how to use this. Let me just call this, can you hear the difference? You hear the difference. Or I'll just call it evidence-based audio. Sorry, let me throw this on my phone hold-em-a-fire thing. All right, so this one. Oh yeah, it's Pipeline Audio on TikTok. So this one is, can you hear the difference? Blind bass direct box shootout. So the first thing to do in this 30-minute video would be to run an oscilloscope, sweep, take some measurements, run it through EQ Wizard, whatever, and see if they're even different.
That if I want to, I can.
But instead, you get a half-hour video.
I've been thinking about buying it back, and then I was like, can I justify the cost of such an
he's going
expensive
between,
direct box? Does it really
what do
make
you
that much
got
of a
here?
difference? And then I was like, well, if I'm going to spend money on.
If I heard any difference at all, it was maybe a difference of like 2%
Red
out of
Shoal.
100. I don't have a clear
like
favorite.
tone
Okay,
of
that's
word
fine. So why don't you listen to them soloed now? Because I think you're going to start to notice a lot more when it's soloed.
All right. Okay.
So
here
you're
we go.
talking about I think this is Rhett Shull. I'm not positive. I don't know whose Keisha goes hard. That sounds scary. I don't really know what the invite to live does. I'm still learning TikTok, you guys. Sorry. So we're just listening to bass shootout, which I think is Rhett Shull. Again, not somebody I really consider.
2. Three.
Yeah, that one's distorting. If I heard my DI box distorting when I didn't want it to, I would just say that's a defective unit.
4.
This one's distorting like crazy again. So again, you guys are doing something weird. This is unless you're purposely distorting them, whatever. This is a useless test. So let's go through here. So they're looking at the JDI, which again, so for once, TikTok guys are going to see something. Here's a JDI. I got one in my hand, so don't tell me that the reason that I say that these things tend to sound good or the same is that I can't afford whatever gear. Here it is in my hand right here, so shush on that. In fact, let's do something that I can't stand, which is, let's see if this will pop up. All right. Oh, there's my webcam. So you guys on there, here's my JDI. I've got like 7 radial direct boxes. I love these things. However, the El Cheapo $20 one tests just as well. So this one's got some sort of like Ampeg one with a bunch of knobs on it, and red DI box. Is that the one that's like a Telefunken mic pre or something? I'm not sure. So anyway, they got the Noble and something else. So anyway, it's a bunch of stuff with, again, I think it's Retschel. Let's see. Radial JDI, Red DI, Ampeg, Color Box, Noble, Pile, and Zod. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pile was just fine. But I don't trust these guys. Sorry. But what we don't see here on this whole entire video is an actual graph. Now, in this case, they do sound different, but I doubt it's because of what they're saying. Let me see. Let me just play a little bit.
Sounds pretty clean. Good articulation.
2.
That one maybe seems a little warmer in the low mids. Pretty similar.
But if you guys don't know, the radial JDI is it's the same circuit you would if you went to Jensen Engineering way back in the day, the guys from Jensen Transformers, and you grabbed the Jensen I think it was called the JDI, their transformer for direct boxes. They had a schematic circuit, and that's pretty much what's in this radial engineering one, for at least for the JDI. The Pile is $22 now. One of the best DIs we tested back in the day was a $20 mic pre, but that was $20 back in like 2010. So
3.
There's definitely some more saturation on 3, a little fuzziness to it. Not too much, not over the top.
4.
All right, there's a little more saturation going on there, a little distortion. Not quite as pleasing. Some nice saturation on that one. I like that one maybe the best so far of the saturated ones.
6.
So it's got a
what was
lot
5?
of articulation, a lot of definition.
almost $1,200 for a DI box? I don't think so.
Not quite as warm sounding.
So I really want them to put 1 and 6 next to each other. So 1 is the radial JDI and 6 is a Pile, $22 one. If you ever saw the video I did where I'm comparing, I put on, there's a couple videos where I took the $100 Pile drum mic kit. It had like 2 little condensers, a kick drum mic, snare drum mic, and some clip-on tom mics. And I did a bunch of drum recordings on some videos with it. And that $100 drum mic set sounded pretty good. So I wouldn't be surprised if this $22 Pile was pretty close to the JDI. Sure sounded like it.
7.
7's nice. It's got a little more grit to it.
I don't really want the grit. You know, if I'm going to put grit on, I'm going to do that myself with the plug-in or whatever. But, yeah, 1 and 6. Let's see if they reveal to him.
Definition. I feel like, all of these examples had really good note definition. 6 was probably my least favorite because it had tons of definition, but no real meat or low end.
Oh, interesting. So the Pile, those number 6. But then again, you're primed, right? You listen to the radial first, which is absolutely clean. I know people say Transformers do all this magical stuff. They really don't. But after listening to a bunch of distorted ones, you go back to the pile. I wonder what would have happened if you switched back to the JDI after all the distorted ones, how the perception would be. That's the trouble with this stuff. And again, human beings are error generating devices. If you think you can trust your ears, you don't understand biology, psychology, physiology, or audio. Again, you can just watch a video on the McGurk effect where the same sound comes out with different pictures playing and your ears hear it totally different. So again, you got to really be careful when you're doing these kind of tests. That's why, first of all, let's just run some graphs, run some sweeps through these things and see if there's an actual difference first. In this case, they were distorting the hell out of a lot of these. And I don't know if that's something you can't get rid of on those DIs. I would say if I had a DI that I couldn't not distort, I wouldn't use it. I mean, if it's really there to distort, fine. But I need a DI that'll handle pretty much anything. All right, so let's see if
there is a
say
balancing
anything.
act. Their favorite examples were kind of what my ear gravitated. Interesting, a radio one. Interesting to me that I was able to tell just in a quick time that was my favorite, and it's the most expensive. It's also interesting to me that I picked out the pile as my least favorite, and it's the most expensive. To tell just in a quick time that was my favorite. That I was able to tell. It was a little funny to say, but it is interesting to me that that feels a little funny to say, but got the most expensive one, ADI. I'm kind of impressed with myself, I guess, that I picked out the most expensive one. I don't know.
Did he pick out the most expensive one? That was the Noble. Yeah, hold on.
A DI. And number 1 feels that way also. Number 5 feels that way, but it's got like more character, and
I hate the word character. With this
it
stuff.
seems to saturate a little more, so that leads me to believe that it might be a tube DI. I guess 2 might also be I guess they could all be tube DIs, but number 5 sounds like one, and I love it. But I think 2 is my favorite because it's neutral, it's nice, it's hi-fi, yeah, I think 2 is my favorite. So let's see what they are. Ha! My favorite. I knew it. Okay, so number 1 is a radial. I have 4 of those things in there.
I think a lot of us do.
That's hilarious. Pile. I will say the pile, number 6, I heard it and I was like, oh, that's some cool, like, lo-fi. I could hear that being like on a War on Drugs record, or I could hear Tame Impala. The radio.
Okay, so
I mentioned by name.
I'm just popping through here and taking a look.
It was the keep
Yeah,
them
that
up
is
then
Red
sound.
Skull, man. I have zero
One
respect.
If it has the sound for more soft, it's like hit the.
So I'm just scrolling through this video to look for any example where they actually measured something.
I have worse field.
And I'm pretty sure they didn't. I'll shut up with this
It
one.
does.
Okay. Now there's a video it's from a channel called Everything Music and Recording, and it's do you need an external mic preamp, or is your audio interface good enough? He again doesn't really provide any real evidence that I could see, but he just says, really doesn't make that much of a difference when it comes down to it, which is honest. And then there's this one from one of these Joey Sturgis videos. I don't know who this guy, Miami. Do expensive preamps make your audio sound better? So, first of all, what do you mean by better? I think for a lot of us, when we say better, when it comes to a mic preamp, we just mean a straight wire with gain, right? You don't want to add any noise. You don't want to distort unless you're trying to distort. You don't want to wreck the frequency response. You don't want to change the bandwidth unless you're out trying to change the bandwidth. In general, more transparent is really what you're after, right? And so is that what you mean by better? Because any kind of modification you do to something, and I'll use like the treble booster example. So the Mutt Lang trick with the Dolby noise reduction encode only. So you're really boosting, if that's the Def Leppard, Shania Twain, whatever sound, that can sound great on certain things, vocals, snare, drums, things like that. Put it on something noisy and see if you think that actually sounds better. Guitar cabinets, often you want to low pass them, right? Low pass your vocals and see how much better you think that is, So it's kind of a weird question, but let's see what they go through on here. I won't torture you. I'm going to actually run this at a little bit higher speed.
My friends, there comes a point in every engineer's life when they start questioning the preamps they're using. It's been a while since we did a vid on preamps, and I'm preamped about making this video, so let's get to it. Most of us have come a long way from using an M-Box or the classic Fast Track Pro. That was my first interface with a preamp, by the way. The newer interfaces today that come with preamps are more than enough to get the job done, but I want to talk about strictly preamps, not ones that come packaged with interfaces and converters, because we have to realize something. As amazing as these products are, they're obviously aimed at a budget-friendly market. It would be quite difficult to pack.
Okay, so you already we're making claims here without any evidence, but here's the claim. And we heard this with the Barry John Studio Talk thing the other day. Because it's a budget, I mean, they're insinuating that because it's at a budget, it won't be able to sound as good as another dedicated, more expensive mic preamp. Why? Maybe you don't have the money to put as much into the engineering, but then again, maybe there's a certain threshold where once you reach it, it's not going to do you any good. Let's say you are trying to race a car down a quarter mile as fast as possible. Okay. You could, let's say that to get through the staging and to get to the finish line, you need, let's say 5 gallons of gas. You really only need 3, but maybe that extra 2 in case you get stuck in staging for some reason, you miss your burnout, whatever. So 5 gallons of gas. If you put 10 gallons of gas in there, your car's not going to go any faster. It didn't help you to add more gas after a certain point, as much gas as you need. In fact, in the car example, it may not be a great analogy because it actually hurts you because you're carrying more weight. You're going to go a little bit slower. So once you reach that threshold, more money's not going to do you any good anyway. So let's see what they say. But hopefully they got some evidence in this thing.
Preamps, converters, interfaces, DAC, and monitoring options into a neat little box, and then make those preamps beat a solidified preamp. By the end of this video,
what do you mean by beat? What do you mean by beat? You see, you got to define your terms.
Giving you the lowdown on the most sought after preamps and what they're best used for. So what's happening, fam? Miami.
So here's, again, this is part of this religion of pro audio. Certain mic preamps are better for certain sources. Of course, the API is absolutely what you want on a snare drum or maybe toms. You want these Neve mic preamps on vocals and SSL mic preamp for something clinical or whatever the claim is. And then when it comes out, let's cut to the chase. We all know by this point, hopefully, that really high profile tests were done where all these golden ears that claim to hear the difference between all these mic preamps ended up picking the Mackie and the Art, the ones they hated the most, as some of the best mic preamps. So you guys know all that stuff is full of crap. These things don't really sound different than each other in any meaningful way unless you purposely do something weird to the signal. But let's see. This guy's just gonna. If you guys ever watch Apologetics, this is what you do. They put out a lot of Deepak Chopra word salad, and instead of coming out with real terms, hey, this one is up 3 dB at 12K, hey, AMEC 9098, something like that. They just talk about warm or best suited for, whatever. So here we go. We got a lot of claims. Let's see if they bring any evidence at all.
Here with JST, and over the years I've acquired SSL, API, Neve, Chandler, and Daking preamps. Honorable mention to Audient, who punches way above its weight class but isn't as expensive as the others. I love to pump up Audient, so I might as well pump up my audience by asking them to hit that subscribe button. That's my first transition, but we got more today. We got more. So those preamps, well, those are the ones I've kept anyways, and for good reason. They are the best of the best. And all
why are they the best? So there is something on mic preamps that could matter to you, and that's the amount of gain available. For instance, right now I'm speaking through a Electro Voice RE20 mic. This thing takes a lot of gain. If I plug this straight into my Focusrite mic preamps, I need to crank them pretty much all the way up in order to get them at a decent level. Kind of doesn't matter with digital. You can keep cranking whatever. But it's, this is where cloud lifters and things like that were invented for. It's just to give you some peace of mind that you got enough boost on here. That's where a mic preamp might make a lot of difference. When we actually did these tests, we found that some of the mic preamps were a little bit noisier than others. But usually the noise floor was so far down that it really wasn't going to matter anyway.
All have their own unique flavors and purpose, but people always want.
Okay, now he's claiming that they all have their own unique flavors and purpose. That's not true. Unless you're going to, for the most part, we tested, what did we test? Focusrite, Neve, AMEC, Behringer, Apogee. No, it wasn't Apogee. We tested a whole bunch of different mic preamps, and they were all within plus or minus 1 dB of each other, except for one that did a little bit of a cheat in order to boost the high end a little bit. But you could do that with an EQ. So he's claiming they're different character, they're different purposes. It's not true. Maybe when you distort them, they act different. But really, are you distorting your mic preamps?
Want to know which are my favorite or what they sound like, or and this is my favorite one, which should you use for what? Well,
especially if you're going to make that claim, you've got to provide the graphs. Run a sweep through it. Let's look at the O-scope readings. Let's look at Room EQ Wizard. Look at any real-time analyzer, whatever. Prove there's a difference first. You're just talking at this point. And, I don't trust these people. I know I used to be a true believer. I was raised in that religion of pro audio. And that's why I do this, because I used to tell people they had to buy $5,000 mic preamps in order to do anything. And this is my penance, because it was nonsense. And like I say, the worst thing about that, the worst failing of mine, this is my personal failing. I had a tech room with every bit of measurement equipment you could imagine back in the 90s anyway. Nowadays it's way better. And I measured this stuff myself, and I didn't see a difference, and yet I kept preaching this nonsense that was taught to me by our deacons and priests and whatever of gurus of pro audio. But this guy's saying the same crap. But again, you got to back it up.
well, I'm happy to actually answer because after using them extensively, some are actually better for specific applications.
Really? Prove it. So he's saying after using them extensively. So, when you're talking about medicine, the disease specialist will always tell you that the scariest things to hear from a doctor is, in my experience, the amount of confirmation bias you can bring to your own crap. It's just amazing. People can justify to themselves the craziest stuff, and often it goes along with price tag.
So let's get into it. Coming in with possibly the most legendary preamp of all time, the Neve 1073. I'm looking at that little guy over there. Let's take a listen to this beauty real quick. Preamp has a special power that people that aren't in the industry don't know. When you're a studio looking to get into the commercial category and want to rent your room out, the 3 most requested pieces of gear are a Neumann U.
Yeah, okay, so here's where it matters. If you're renting your studio out to other people, they're going to want to see certain pieces of gear. It doesn't matter what the truth is at all. They want to see this. So, if you're running your studio out to other people, buy this stuff. And like I always say, we deal with rappers. Rappers want to see an Avalon SP737 mic preamp, or you lose their confidence. So, placebo effect is definitely real. And if you're in a commercial situation of that sort, it may be what you need to do. But don't fool yourself into thinking it sounds better. I'm just going to kind of zoom through here and see if they actually provide any actual evidence. It doesn't look like it. Again, just claims coming from the Joey Sturgis channel. All right, so we got something else here. I wanted to make a full range flat response speaker cabinet. My friend built me some really good cabinets, but I'm also looking at combo amps that you could just pull the speaker out of and put the Celestion F12 series speakers in to make a full range flat response cabinet a little bit easier to carry around, because it's already a combo. It's got a master volume on there, depending on the topology and stuff. And one of the ones that I was surprised by, I picked up a Fender Rumble over at the music store. I actually picked it up. I didn't buy it. I just picked it up. And I was blown away by how light it was. And when I came back to the school, I checked the specs, and it said 100 watts at 8 ohms, which, watts are, you never know. People play funny business with wattage ratings. But, man, it blew me away how light this thing was. And plus, because it's a bass cabinet, it's a little bit bigger. It's probably a better platform for putting this FR in. It's a closed back, and it's probably ported or something for all I know. And so I was like, man, this might make the perfect platform, right? So it's either that. I'm looking at the Boss Katana. The Fender Mustang, the older ones, the 8 ohm ones, works really well too, but those are famous for having their master volume controls fail. So I took a look and kind of having a little argument with somebody about reading block diagrams, and he was it looked, if I pull up the schematic, sorry you guys on TikTok can't see this, but there is a cab simulator, and the way that this block diagram looks, if there's any electrical block diagram reading experts, look, I do have expertise in reading electronic schematics, but I was thinking, is there different rules for block diagrams? Because before the power amp, there's 2 node markers, 2 node connectors going into the negative and positive sides of the power amp. And there's also a speaker cab sim in line with that, but post. But because there's no arrows, it's really ambiguous whether or not this cab simulator actually goes to the power amp. If it does, I don't want it, because I'm running my own impulses. I don't want that to happen. But it's probably true that the cab sim is not on the power amp. And I was having a little argument on a forum about it. Somebody's saying the only way to read the schematic is that blah blah blah. That's not true. If you put, at least in electronics, if you put a node marker in, everything is assumed to be on the same node. It's not a directional thing. If you read the flowchart as a whole and use reason as the only way to interpret it, that's all I was trying to say. Sorry that I didn't expect the pedantic know-it-all attitude from you. Tell me if you want me to assume that. I'm just going to have to put the snark back. Sorry, I wasn't being the know-it-all, and I did not claim that there is only one way to read this. Someone else did that. Yeah. So he's saying that there's only one way to interpret this if you use reason. But look, we're talking about an industry where, like, for instance, Line 6 made it so that on the line out of a live amplifier, if you plugged in the line out, it disconnected your speaker. So don't tell me that that's the only reasonable way to interpret it, because as we've seen, in fact, I'm just going to put that out. Never assume reason when it comes to audio gear. For instance, look at the Line 6 Amplify series. Okay. So anyway, so that was if somebody knows that block diagrams are treated in a different way than regular electronic schematics, let me know, because I would like to be able to read these things correctly. And he's right. It seems reasonable that... Oh, man, I almost forgot my batteries and my wireless for my show tonight. Hold on, let me throw these in my bag. That would have been an epic fail of monumental proportions. But yes, please, if somebody has a better, knows more about reading block diagrams when it comes to amplifiers or whatever, it's not a schematic. This is a block diagram. It's sort of a schematic. It's really not. If nodes are treated differently on block diagrams than schematics, let me know. But I don't think they are. I think a node is an omnidirectional indicator rather than a unidirectional one. I had a little bit more, but I'm going to deal with that later. And